menichu v'simchu, oy oy menichu v'simchu, menichu v'simchu, oy 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 layidim, menichu v'simchu, oy layidim, yovovoim shavusoim, yovovoim machmudim, yoim shavusoim, yoim machmudim, oy vay oy vay oy oy oy, yovoim yovoim machmudim. Shoy v'lavezoy v'lov, shana v'zoy v'lov, v'aymu me'idim. Oy ki leshishu, oy v'liyir v'layim.
Shvai shumayim, Eretz v'yamim.
Shemai, Shemai, Shemayim, oy Eretz v'yamim, oy kol zevum uroim, kol zevum uroim, oy gevayim, oy berumim, ramin v'yudom v'chayas v'yayimin, yoy vay vay, yoy vay vay, yoy vay, yoy vay, ramin v'yudom v'chayas v'yayimin, yoy vay, yoy vay, yoy 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 yoy.
Ahoy, kaner v'yudam, oy 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 oy, kaner v'yudam, v'chayas v'yayimim, im v'kashem tziroy lumim.
Ihi asheni yiben, leheyam segilu so, shuhom oyle kadishoy, mi boyoy v'yasay soy, la 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 la, la 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 la. Shabbos kodesh, yovoim chem duzoy, oy vay, oy vay vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy 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 vay, yovoim chem duzoy, oy Shabbos kodesh, yovoim chem duzoy, yovoim chem duzoy, la 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 la, oy vay, oy vay, yovoim chem duzoy, Shabbos kodesh, yovoim chem duzoy, yovoim chem duzoy, la 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 la, oy oy oy, la 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 la, oy la la la. Oy oy oy, oy oy oy, ay la 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 la, ay la 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 la, yoy shuvas, shuvas kayim mikol. Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Na 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 moy oy oy. Emi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, bemi yitzvah Shabbos. Oy vay, Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Bemi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, 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 oy. Na 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 na, oy, 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 oy. Kaye ye ye liach litzor.
Shalom, my dear friends, Shalom and Shavuot Tov and Chodesh Tov Mvorach, a good and a blessed month today, the 30th day of the month of Shavat of the year 5777, the last day of the month, which is already Rosh Chodesh, the new moon of the coming month of Adar, which the first day of which begins tonight, and tomorrow, the first of Adar. And we therefore, as according to the way that our calendar works, celebrate this month 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, and already the spirit of Adar is upon us. Adar, of which it is said, Mishenichnas Adar Marbin Besimcho. When Adar enters, we maximize our simcha. So let us hope that, God willing, with the help and in the merit of our studies of the Torah, will indeed actualize this, and therefore let us proceed with our studies today. With the help of God, we shall have a full week of studies this week. Next week we will be studying in the earlier part of the week, and next Wednesday, however, next Thursday, the Thursday before Shabbat Zachor and Purim, there will not be Kollel until after Purim. I will notify you of all the dates when we will be having classes in the coming Azamra weekly newsletter. So with the help of God, let us turn now to our study of the book of Job, Sefer Iyov. Shalom today, the 30th day of the month of Shavat of the year 5777, Rosh Chodesh Adar, the new moon of the month of Adar, first day of Rosh Chodesh, corresponding to the 26th of February of the year 2016. And we continue today with our studies of the book of Job, turning now to the continuation of Job's reply to Bildad Hashuchi, the second of the third companions who have addressed Job, and we've already studied chapter 9 with the beginning of Job's, the lengthy and very moving beginning of Job's reply to Bildad. And now he continues coming to address the Almighty directly. Because in the previous section of the discourse starting in chapter 9, Job had repeatedly longed and wished to be able to speak with God, to bring his case before God, were it not for the terror of God's overwhelming greatness that keeps him unable to express himself. But now he comes to let us know in chapter 10 how he's going to just let his words flow forth from his mouth because he cannot anymore hold it back. Beginning now with the Hebrew text of Job chapter 10, where Job has just said in the previous verse 35 of chapter 9, Adabro v'lo yiro'eno, let me speak that I should not be afraid of him. Ki lo chein onochi imodi, I'm not so, that is to say, as his companions view him as someone who must have sinned to be suffering in this way. Lo chein, not so, onochi imodi, am I in myself. Noketo nafshi b'chayoy ezvo olai sichi adabro b'mar nafshi. Nokto nafshi. According to one interpretation, nokto means that my soul, nafshi, has been cut off. According to a different interpretation, that of Rashi on this verse, his soul is in a state of ketata, of turmoil and inner conflict of the fact that he is alive. Nokto nafshi b'chayoy, my soul has been cut off through this internal turmoil, even in my very lifetime. Ezvo olai sichi, I shall let go, therefore, I shall let go my siach, my words, my torrent of words, my cry, my complaint, because I simply cannot forget it, I cannot hold it back. Adabro b'mar nafshi, let me speak in the bitterness of my soul. Omar el Eloah, al tarshi'aini, hodi'eni, al ma teriveini. Omar el Eloha, let me speak now to God. Job is turned away from his companions. He cannot find consolation in their words. He's speaking to God. Al tarshi'eni, do not rule me guilty, wicked. Do not condemn me. Hodi'eni al ma teriveini. Hodi'eni, let me know. Alma, over what teriveni, over what are you in this reeve, this battle, this conflict with me, this argument with me? Hatov lecho, ki sa'ashok, ki sima'as, yegia kapecho, v'yal atzas reshoim hofota. A question indicated by the Chataf Patach under the hay of Hatov, introducing the question, is it good for you? Does it befit you? Kisa ashok, that you should crush, that you should oppress. Kisim'as yigia kapecho, that you should despise and feel revulsion for the toil of your hands. That is to say, the righteous that have grown up in good deeds under God's constant providence. And yet over the counsel of the wicked you have shone forth. Here you are oppressing and crushing the righteous, and over the wicked you have shone your light. You shine them a smiling face in this world. Their affairs prosper. So this is Job's complaint now addressed, the seeming complete unfairness of it, the injustice of it. And this is a theme that will recur as we proceed through the book. And Job asks God, why are you trying me? Why are you testing me in this way? Verse 4. Ha'enei vosor loch im kira'ois enosh tir'eh. Again, the hey at the beginning of the verse. Is it that eyes of flesh are to you? Do you see me? Do you see people the way that humans see each other, seeing only the outside but not the inside, not what is in the heart? Im kira'ois enosh tir'eh. Is it like the seeing in the vision of enosh, another expression for ish, a person, man? Is it with the vision of man that you view, you see me? Do you not know my innocence? Why do you have to try me and test me in this way? Verse 5. Hach yemei enosh yomecho im shenosecho ki yemei gover. Is it that, like the days of Enosh, a man, are your days? Are your years like the days of a gever, like a man? Ki sevakish la'avoni v'lachatosi sidrosh. That you must search after my sin, after my transgression, do you seek and inquire? In other words, as explained by the Metzudat David, do you have eyes of flesh? Do you have eyes similar to those of flesh and blood, that only do not see what is hidden in the heart? For surely you see that which is hidden in the heart. You know who is righteous and who is wicked. Why therefore do you switch around their reward, that the wicked have prosperity, the righteous are suffering? And in verse 5, Metzudat David explains, he's saying that if indeed I have sinned, why are you so quickly coming to punish me for this? The punishments are coming just one after the other. Are your days merely like the days of man, that for that reason you have to hurry up and speed up the requites of a person so very quickly, for fear that they might not come to be the punishments might not be able to be applied afterwards if the person repents? Why are you in such a hurry to cause this suffering to me? Surely you live forever, and all the time I'm in your hands. Continuing now with verse 7. Al da'atecho ki lo ye'eresho v'yein miyodecho matzil. Al da'atecho, according to your knowledge, according to the knowledge that you have of me, you know, ki lo eresho, that I shall not be wicked. Rashi explains the phrase al da'atecho, Yodea ato, you know that I will not be wicked, that is not me. Ve'ein miyodecho matzil, and yet there is not from your hand anybody that can redeem me. And now Job enters into this very, very beautiful passage, much quoted in the Midrashim, about how Job is the work of God's hands, There's none to save me from you, for, beginning verse 8 now, Yodecho aitzevuni vayasuni yachad soviv vatavalaeni. Yodecho, your hands, O God, they designed me. Vayasuni yachad soviv. They made me. Yachad, together, soviv, around. That is to say that you've made me in the says Rashi, the etzev defus, the mold of a creature. That is to say, a creature that has limbs. And now explains Rashi, the second part of the sentence, Yachad soviv vatavalaeni, all together around all of your forces, vatavalaeni, you are trying to swallow me up with these forces that, in the literal sense, the worms that are eating up and swallowing up Job's postulating flesh. And this is the hand of God against him. You have made me, and you are doing this to me now. Please remember, please, Job, with God, please remember verse 9, Zechor no, ki chahomer asisoni, ve'el ofor teshiveni. Remember, please, that like chomer, like clay have you made me, and to the earth will you return me. And now evoking in verse 10 the formation of the embryo in the womb of the mother. Halo cheholov taticheni v'chagavino takbieni. Halo, is it not that kecholov, like milk, taticheni, you poured me out, the first emission of the seed, like a milk that is poured out, and then as it begins to develop in the womb of the mother with the egg of the mother, kagavino takbieni, like cheese, like a spreading web of tissues that are developing. Takpieni, you are making me solid, a solid being, a solid creature. The very beginnings of the formation of the embryo, and then as the embryo develops, or uvosor talbisheni, uva'atsomois v'gidim tesuichecheni. With skin and with flesh do you clothe me. That is to say, the essential soul is clothed in the skin and the flesh of the body. Uva'atsomois v'gidim tesuchecheni, with bones and with sinews you cover me over. Hayim v'chesed osiso imodi, ufekudosecho shomro ruchi. Life and kindness did you perform with me, and your statutes, your commandments, did guard my soul. That is to say, my soul guarded your commandments, and could also equally be your commandments guarded my soul. So these verses are discussed in the Talmud in some very beautiful passages, which it's well worth looking at now as we are at this spot. So the Talmud on verse 10, is it not that like milk have you poured me forth, and like cheese do you solidify me? The Talmud in Tractate Nida, Babylonian Tractate Nida, Daf Chofei Amud Aleph, folio 25 on the A side of the page. our sages, our rabbis have taught what is considered the Shapir Merukam, the first coagulation of the embryo. Brought down in the name of Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul said, the beginning of the creation of the embryo is from its head, and its two eyes are like the two drops of the eyes of a fly. Taught Rabbi Chio, they are a little further, a little far away one from the other, are the two nostrils, like the two drops of the fly. Says Rabbi Chio, and the nostrils are close together, and the mouth is stretched across like a thread of hair, and the body of the embryo is like a lentil, and if it is a female, she would be judged as a size of a barley kernel in her length. And so far there is no differentiation of hands or legs. And of this it says in the book of Job, quotes the Talmud here, this verse, like milk have you poured me forth, and like cheese do you solidify me. With skin and with flesh do you clothe me, and bones and sinews have you covered me over. Life and kindness have you performed with me, and my soul, even then in the womb, guarded your commandment. What a very beautiful passage from the Talmud in Sanhedrin now. Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Bes, 91, follow 91 on the B side of the page. The Emperor Antoninus said to Rabbi Judah the Prince, his dear friend, from when is the neshama, the soul, put into the person? From the time of the Pekidah, that is to say, of the union of father and mother, or from the time of the formation of the embryo, which is considered to be only at 40 days after the actual conception. So Rabbi Yehuda the Prince answered his friend, the Emperor Antoninus, well, it's from the time of the Yitzirah, from the time that the embryo first begins to form at 40 days, then the soul enters the embryo. Replied to him the Emperor, is it possible that a piece of flesh could stand there for 3 days without salt and it won't spoil? Surely it must be from the time of the Pekidah, from the time of the actual conception, that the soul is already present. Said Rabbi Judah the Prince, this thing I learned from Antoninus. It was Antoninus that taught me this thing, and the text here supports him, because it says that already, when it says in our verse, Upgudoscho Shomro Ruchi, when it says, your commandment did my spirit guard, the word Pekudosecho is the same root as the word Pekido of the moment of conception, and also has the connotation of the commandments. So says the Talmud in Sanhedrin, showing how Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, was willing to learn from his Roman emperor friend Antoninus, a very remarkable thing. Let's continue with another very beautiful midrash here. This is taken from the Midrash Vayikra Rabo, where the midrash tells us on the verse Chaim v'chesed osiso imodi, life and kindness did you perform with me. Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana says, Normally in the world, if a person gives takes a purse full of coins and puts the mouth of the purse downwards, don't the coins just drop out and scatter? But the embryo is dwelling in the womb of the mother, and the Holy One, blessed be He, guards the embryo that it should not die. Is not this the life and the kindness? Rabbi Abba bar Rav Kahana said, normally in the world, the animal has her breasts placed down in the place near her womb, and the calf is sucking from the place of the shame of the cow, that is to say, near her genitals. But this woman, the human female, her breasts are placed in a beautiful place, in the place of her glory. Is not this the kindness and the life that God shows to the child? Said Rabbi Eliezer, if a person were to be kept in hot water, would he not die? Well, now the insides of the woman are boiling, and their heart, and the embryo is put there in her womb, and God protects the embryo that it should not become an aborted fetus. It should not be turned into a formless piece of tissue that never develops. Is not that protection the life and the kindness God shows to the embryo? Says Rabbi Tachalifo from Caesarea, if a person simply eats slice after slice, doesn't the second one push down the first one? Now this woman, how much food is she eating, and how much drink does she drink? And she does not push out the embryo from within her. Is not this the kindness and the life and the kindness? Said Rabbi Simon, the insides of the woman are made with twisting corners, and one upon the other. And at the time when the woman is on the delivery stool, she doesn't cast forth the baby all in one moment, but it takes time until the miraculously through the contractions, the cords that hold the embryo are released. Said Rabbi Meir, all of the 9 months, the woman does not see menstrual blood. Now, one would have thought that logically she should be seeing blood in this period. What did the Holy One, blessed be He, do with the blood of the woman? He brings it upwards to her breasts and turns the blood into milk, in order that when the embryo will come forth, he will have food to eat. Is not this the life and the kindness? Said Rabbi Abahu, what a great goodness God has done with woman in this world, that the formation of the child was not at first with its bones and sinews intact and hardened. Because if that were the case, the child would burst through her belly and come forth. But this way the child is soft, and the bones are still soft enough to pass through the birth channel. All of this in Vayikra Rabbah, the Midrash Rabbah Vayikra in Parsha Yudalet, portion 14 of the Midrash Rabbah Vayikra. So continue now with this very beautiful passage about the formation of man. So after all of that, after all of this creation, which exemplifies how Job is literally the work of the labor of God's hands, after all this, now Job asked, why are you punishing me with these afflictions? Yud Gimel, verse 13. Ve'ele tzofanto v'levovecho, yodati ki zois imoch. These things, these mysterious accusations against Job, have you treasured up in your heart against me? This non-existent sin that Job is accused of. Yodati ki zois imoch. I've known that this is with you. Somewhat obscure words. So our commentators explain these words in verse 13. Ve'ele tzofanti belevovecho. These things have you hidden away in your heart, in God's inner counsel against him. Was it after all this labor in producing me, Job says, as explained by Rashi, that now you're going to swallow me up, as if you don't remember all of this effort that was put into my creation. And he says, Yodati ki zois imoch. I know that this is with you. Everything is exactly set forth before you. You have not forgotten anything. So how could it be that now you want to swallow me up? Verse 14. Imchotosi ushemartoni ume'avoini loi senakeni. If I have sinned, ushemartoni, are you guarding me? Are you watching after me? Rashi says, you've put your eyes upon me, not hiding your eyes from me, and not being willing to go over your attributes to the side of mercy. And now are you not going to clean me from my sin? Will you not cleanse me from my sins? Im roshati allalai li v'tzodakti lo esor roshi sva kolon u're'ei onyi. Job now complaining, yes, im roshati, if I were wicked, allalai li, woe is to me, allalai, cry of horror, woe were I to be wicked. V'tzodakti, but even if I am indeed righteous, lo eso roshi, I still cannot raise my head before you. Seva kolon, satiated with shame, with disgrace of this disfiguring affliction. U're'ei onyi, and the vision of my wretchedness. Although it might appear that here the word u're'ei is Job's appeal and imperative to God, see my wretchedness, Rashi considers this word u're'ei here, re'ei, to be a verbal noun that Job is complaining, Seva kolon, I'm satiated with this disgrace, and re'ei, with the vision of my wretchedness. V'yige'eh kashachal tetzudeni v'soshov tispalovi. V'yige'eh, from the root of ge'eh, proud and swelled up with grandeur. Job is appealing. God could cut him off in a moment. He will rear up overpoweringly, kashacha, like a lion, to tzudeni. He will hunt me down and catch me, trap me as his prey. But no, v'soshov tispalo vi. You go back each time, tispalo, you are in wonder at me. You're testing me and trying me all the time with new afflictions. Instead of wiping me out in one moment, says Job, like a lion with its prey, you keep coming back and trying me again. Verse 17, Techadish eidecho negdi, you renew your witnesses against me. V'serev ka'ascho imodi, you multiply your anger, your rage with me. Chalifois v'tzovo imi, there are exchanges of rank after rank of guards of oppressors who are coming one after the other to afflict Job. And if all of this terrible suffering, and who can fault Job in this dire straits where he sees no hopes of ever coming out of this affliction, he asks God directly, so bravely, so with such a challenge. Verse 18, Velomo merechem hoitzeisoni, egva va'ayin lo sir'eni. Then why from the womb did you bring me forth? Let me have expired, and the eye would not have seen me. Reminiscent of Job's first complaint in chapter 3, when he curses the day of his birth and wished that he had never been alive. And Job can be forgiven for returning over and over again to these deep, deep sores as he suffers there. Amplifying verse 19, Ka'asher lo hoyisi ehyeh, mi beten la'kever uvol, had he died, Ka'asher lo hoyisi ehyeh, as if I'd never been, then would I be, an embryo being carried out, mi beten from the womb, la'kever to the grave, uvol, I would have been brought out. Had only that happened to him, complains Job. Verse 20, Halo ma'at yomai v'chadol, of my few days, v'chadol, they are gone away. Halo ma'at yomai v'chadol, v'shis mimeni v'avligo ma'ot, are not my days few? Let him let off from me, and let him put himself away from me so that I can recover just a bit, to gain a bit of strength. B'terem elech v'lo shuv el eretz choshech v'tzalmoves, before I go, and I shall not return to a land of darkness and the shadow of death. Again, we have Job's conception of the afterlife, if that is what we can call it, is only as a place of gloom and darkness, the darkness and gloom of the grave, a very pessimistic view, which is not borne out by the hashkafa of the Torah and of the Holy Zohar, that while the body is in the grave, the soul actually ascends level by level to experience ever greater radiance of God as the sins of the soul are expunged through the judgment of the grave, and the soul is purified, and there is life after life. But Job's view here is, in his suffering and torment, so very pessimistic. Had only he died, because his days are so short before he will inevitably go, never to return to this land of darkness. Verse 22, Eretz efoso kemo ofel, tzalmoves velo sedorim, vatofa kemo ofel. Very gloomy vocabulary here. Eretz efoso, a land of thick darkness. The root here has a connotation of something folded over itself, a thickly folded a blanket of darkness, a a land of thick darkness, like the Ophel, another expression of thick dark darkness. Tsal moves, again as in the previous verse, the shadow of death. V'lo sedorim, no orders. There's none of the orders that we know in this world of different times and different seasons and different orders, ranks of people and beings. But here it's all chaos, but a dark chaos, vatofa, normally an expression denoting the blessing of light. But here the revelation is kemo ofel, it's like darkness. Anything revealed down there is all, even the light is dark down there. A very gloomy and pessimistic ending to this moving speech of Job in answer to Bildad HaShuchi, and to conclude with the summary by the Metzudat David of the entire Ma'aneh here, Job's answer to Bildad. Says the Metzudat David, what comes out from this speech is to negate the opinion of Bildad, who said that everything comes through God's providence, and that the good experienced by the wicked is to their ultimate detriment, while the suffering of the tzaddikim is to their ultimate good, because Job answers saying that how can it be, if so, that they all go through the same things? These two different categories of the righteous and the wicked are all going through different kinds of suffering, and eventually they all go to the one end of that is death. And yet their deeds are different. And if you say that it's because of the sudden death that occurs to the wicked person, that will be considered to his benefit, and he'd prefer this rather than being stretched out with on the rack of affliction in the way that the tzaddikim are tormented. And Job complains, says the Metzudat David is complaining, why is God already hurrying to pay him all of the requites of the wicked? Surely man is in God's hand all the time, and there's no hurry. And he argues with God, why does he not have pity on the work of God's hands? Why does he not have pity instead of destroying it when the body is made with such amazing wisdom and perfection? So with that, we complete our study of Iyov and of the Mikra for today, and in just a few minutes, we'll be coming back with our study of the Mishnah for today.
Moishe b'mitzvah Shamos gerisu Charisu layoim hashvi'i Kechalu b'nai yoseyu meshivutzu V'hoyde mirushiu v'katshiyu B'maman kol asher uvasu V'yechal Elokim b'yoim hashvi'i Melachto yasher uvasu Yatzai soy Kol zera Yaakov yechavi Kidvar HaMelech vedu soy Uniach koi v'smoyach B'sar niguchoy v'shu soy Oy kol lavas Yisrael Yasi yoyesoy Meshoy echavchu yedechu Kalkanoi v'noi kai Noi trai v'yoi mashvi Zuchoi v'shumoi leyukai Samchai bevil yam shulai Yubnei chut avikai Yirveim b'nei shemai seyichu V'nachal adonei chut sashkai Azoi lashoi zi
Shalom and welcome back now to our study today in the Mishnah, and we're now continuing with our studies in the 6th chapter of Masachet Shabbat, chapter 6, and this is a very exciting new venture in our Mishnah for us today. Shalom, today, the 30th day of the month of Shevat of the year 5777, the last day of the month, Rosh Chodesh Adar, the new moon of the coming month of Adar, corresponding to the 26th of February of the year 2017. And we continue today with our studies in Masachet Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat, at the beginning of chapter 6, which follows on from the previous chapter where we had been looking at the rules surrounding what an animal might go out with on the Shabbat, going out in the sense of going from the private domain to the public domain. The private domain need not necessarily just be the inside of a house. The private domain is any area that is enclosed by a valid wall or partition, making it a private enclosure. And as long as it is enclosed for residential purposes, that would include barns and stalls of animals, and therefore the chickens and the donkeys and the camels and the other animals could go around within the actual Reshut Yachid, the private domain of the farm owner, with many of the things that the Mishnah forbade to go outside, that is to say, into the public domain outside the boundaries of the private domain. And now, having raised those questions with respect to things carried by animals, now in chapter 6 we come to what humans may go out with on the Shabbat, what constitutes clothing and ornaments as opposed to what would be a masa, that is a burden, something that if carried would be a violation of the prohibition of carrying from the private domain to the public domain, or vice versa, the malacha of hotza'ah and or hachnasa, taking out or bringing in. And that's the question which our Mishnah now addresses, taking us into a fascinating tour of the customs of clothing of and apparel of men and women and their ornaments back in Mishteg times, but setting down some fundamental rules for us. And this is part of the wider section of Tractate Shabbat from the previous chapter, chapter 5, all the way until the end of chapter 11, all dealing in one way or the other with the malacha of hotza'ah, of carrying out into the public domain or through the public domain, although in the chapter after this, we shall be coming to the actual definition of the 39 labors and when a person would be in transgression of them and when not. But most of the rest of this section of the Mishnah from chapter 5 until the end of chapter 11 is all bound up with the labor of hotza'ah. So now coming into the text of our Mishnah in the beginning of chapter 6, Bamo isho yoitzo uvamo eino yoitzo. With what may a woman go out on the Shabbat from the Reshut Hayachid, the private domain, the enclosed residential home and homestead? Uvamo eino yoitzo. With what may she not go out? לא תצא אישו לא וחוטי צמר ולא וחוטי פשטון ולא ברצוס שבראשו. The woman should not go out with threads of wool or threads of linen which are used in the plaiting of the woman's hair. She should not go forth with these on the Shabbat, nor with ritzuot, with straps on her head. Velo titbol bohen, nor should she immerse with them. If she was a woman that had to go out from the home to the mikveh, and this applies any time a woman that had such things in her hair, any time she went to immerse, for example, from her menstrual impurity, she should not do so ad she'terapem, until she has loosened them. Well, now before we go on, let us understand why these particular straps are forbidden to go out with on the Shabbat. Now, she would certainly not be able to plait the hair with the straps on the Shabbat, because plaiting the hair with the straps is a violation of the either the malacha of construction, of building, constructing the plait, or of knotting and other prohibitions involved in this. So that could not be done on the Shabbat, even if she had done this prior to the Shabbat. And they were in her hair, she would not be allowed to go out with them from the private domain to the public domain. And the reason is explained to us in the ensuing part of the Mishnah, Velo titbol bohem. She should not immerse in them ad she'terapem, until she loosens them. That is to say that if she had to go for immersion in the mikveh at any time, she would have to release these these threads and straps so that the water would touch every part of her hair, which is required to do, just as it must touch every part of her body when she immerses wholly under the water. All of her hair must go under, all must be exposed to the water, and these straps might not be permeable, or if they are tight, they will not admit the water to certain parts of the hair, so it would not be a valid immersion. Well, now, it could always occur that a woman might need to go out for her immersion on a Friday night. And our Mishnah is telling us that she may not go out with these straps, not in that case, nor under any circumstances, lest she would come to go out with them to immersion some Friday night, and she would have to loosen the straps and before immersing in the water. And what might happen if they come off entirely, she will come to carry them from the mikveh home through the public domain more than 4 cubits, and will be liable to the violation of the prohibition against carrying 4 cubits in the public domain, which is included in the prohibition of carrying in and out on the Shabbat. So it's not that there's any intrinsic prohibition in these straps in the hair, except there is a specific rabbinical decree, a gezerah, not to go out with them on the Shabbat, because if she were accustomed to do so, and sometimes she had to go to immerse in the mikveh, she might come to where she will loosen them and then come to carry them, and that is why the sages put a decree against going out with them at any time in the hair. Continues our Mishnah, now speaking about forms of ornaments of the woman. Velo betotefes, not with a totefes tiara, a band or a bow around the head, with the connotations of its being an ornament. She should not go out with such a totefes, such an ornament, velo besanputin, nor with the straps that would be attached to the totefes, the threads that would have gems, and possibly they might be of silver and gold in the case of wealthier people. These sanbutin, she should not go out with these on the Shabbat, bisman she'einon tefurin, at a time when they are not sewn down onto the basic head covering that the woman would always have. Here our Mishnah is talking about Isha, and the expression Isha is a woman. This is not a naro, a young lass, a young maiden under the age of 12. This is Isha. The presumption is that she is a married woman, and the presumption of the Mishnah is that she will at all times, both in the home and outside, keep her hair covered with a basic hair covering, a sort of fine cap, which is called a sivacha in Mishnaic Hebrew, and this would cover over the hair. And our Mishnah will be discussing other things that may be added on top of the basic hair covering that she should not go out with. Now, in the two cases just mentioned now, the totefes and the sanbutin, they're both ornaments. The totefes, of course, reminds us of the passage in the daily Shema twice over in the book of Deuteronomy, V'hayula totofos bein einecho, they should be for totofos, the tefillin of the head of the male Israelite. The totofos are the ornament of the head, the bayit, the house of the tefillin shel rosh, the head tefillin. They're also called totefes, and in the case of the woman, the totefes would be the crown, the tiara that we have referred to, but it's also an ornament. Now, the essential law of the Torah is that a person, of course, may go out from the private domain to the public wearing their clothes and also wearing ornaments. There's no prohibition against the wearing of ornaments on Shabbat, except where the person is likely to infringe the prohibition in some way. And this is the case with the totefes and the sambutin. These are things that if they're not sewn onto the basic head covering of the woman, it's very possible that the woman would, going out into the street, into the marketplace for a promenade on the Shabbat, would be with her friends and they'd be comparing their ornaments and their jewelry, and she might be inclined to take off the ornamental totefes and sambutin from her head to show them to her friend, and after that she might come to carry them 4 cubits in the public domain. And for that reason our sages have decreed that she would not go out with these into the outside the private domain if they're not attached in such a way that she cannot carry them. V'lo b'kovul the reshus or rabim, nor with the kavul. The kavul is another kind of head covering. It is an extra level of head covering over the most basic of the head coverings of the woman. So the kavul is defined by Rabbi Ovadia of Bartanura as being a kind of strip of fabric that the woman might tie over her forehead in order to put her tiara rested on it, so the tiara is not resting on the skin. So she may not go out with this kavul strip of cloth or covering on which the tiara, the totefes, would be resting. She should not go out l'reshus or rabim, into the public domain. Here the phrase at the end of the Mishnah, she should not go out with the kavul into the reshus or rabim, indicates that the law of the kavul is actually a little less stringent than the previous cases. In the previous cases, the implication is that she should not even go out into the chatzer that is shared between her house and the house of her neighbors, which would be a collective yard which could be formed into an eruv on the Shabbat, so that the neighbors and the houses adjoining the yard could go from one house to the other carrying what they want and also out into the yard. According to the implication where the Mishnah says she should not go into the kavul to the Rishus HaRabim, it implies that the kavul, she may go out from the private house into the shared chatzir yard, but that would not be the case in the previously cited instances where the Mishnah would be saying she should not even go out of the house in them, or it could be construed to be saying that. There is an opinion that the sages' decree against ornaments on Shabbat were stringent, that they would not permit the woman to go out even from the house with most ornaments, and the practice was in those times for women to wear a few ornaments on the Shabbat. The reason why she was permitted to go out with the kavul as far as the collective yard, though not into the street, was that the kavul is something that beautifies her head, and we want to allow her some ornaments so that she will not fall from favor in her husband's eyes. So the Mishnah continues with some of the ornaments worn in Mishnaic times. Velo be'ir shel zohov. The woman should not go out with literally the city of gold. This would be a very beautiful crown-like tiara with the on the tiara would be representations of the Holy Temple on the walls of Jerusalem, and this would particularly be an ornament for women of some status and importance. So again, the fear is that were she to go out with this, she would be inclined to take it off and show her friends. V'lo b'katlo, also not with the katlo necklace. Well, the katlo necklace is quite a tight-fitting necklace, and apparently the women at that time liked to show that they were plump somewhat by tying the necklace tight around their necks, and that's why it was called a katlo, which has the connotation of killing. It strangles the woman, God forbid. So she should not go out with that. Now we come to a very interesting feature of ancient ornaments, very reminiscent of today. Not with rings. Well, the rings in question could be earrings or nose rings. The conclusion of the Talmud is actually the Mishnah here is talking about not going out with nose rings, which, if I may say so, rings a very contemporary bell. But the nezem is nizme af, would be rings in the nose, whereas nizve often the rings of the ear are permitted by the halacha to go out with. Continues the Mishnah, V'lo b'tabas she'eino le'achoisam. The woman should not go out with a ring that has no seal upon it. The matter of the seal is that in those times it would be normal for the male, to the husband, to have a ring that had a seal on it to seal his correspondence, and people at the end of a letter to stamp it with the stamp of authenticity, the male would have his ring that he would use to stamp on the letter. So the ring with a seal is in Mishnaic times associated with the male. Now, the ring without a seal would be typically a woman's ring, and even so, she is held back from taking it out on the Shabbat. And we shall discuss the reasons for this presently. Let's just complete the Mishnah. She should not go out with a pin that is not perforated with a hole. Namely, she should not go out with a pin that is not a sewing pin. We shall see that going out with a pin that is a sewing pin in the next Mishnah, we see that as far more serious offense. All of what we've discussed here, im yotzos eino chayeves chatos. If she did go out, she is not liable to a sin offering. If she were to go out against the law of the Mishnah, she would have been going against a rabbinical gezerot, but she would not actually have been infringing the malacha of carrying out from the private domain to the public domain, because none of the things mentioned above are actually a masa. They're not actually a burden. The fear is that she might come to take them off and then carry them instead of wearing them. The normal way for ornaments is to be worn, and they can only go out. The woman can only go out when within the prescribed parameters when they are being worn. In the case of the machat she'ein nekuvo, this would be a clothespin, which would either be keeping her hair and headwear in place or her clothing in place. And she should not go out with such a pin, and that is again a gezerah, that she might go out with a needle that has a pin. A needle that has a pin is for a woman part of the tools of her trade. One of the melachot associated with the women of Mishnaic times is sewing, and just like we learned in the first chapter of Tractate Shabbos that the chayat, the tailor, may not go out with his needle on the eve of Shabbat for fear he'd carry it on the Shabbat. Even if it's pinned onto his clothes, that is his professional way of carrying the needle, he may not do so. So here the needle is not pierced, and therefore it is a ring that is associated with a woman and not exclusively with a man. We shall see in a moment under what circumstances she might be carrying her husband's ring on her finger. But for the moment, our Mishnah tells us that in all of the above cases, she should not carry any of the above. But if she were to do so, she would not be liable to the sin offering. In other words, these are not actual infringements of the Torah prohibition of carrying. So now, in the second Mishnah, we turn from the females to the males. Lo yetze ho'ish besandol amasumor. A man should not go out in the sandal that has nails and metal studs in it. Again, not going out from the private domain to the public domain in such sandals. And here the rule is, according to the Talmud, related to a particular decree that was passed at a very tragic time in the history of the Jews of the Holy Land, where, according to the Talmud, there was a time when the people were trying to escape from the Roman persecutors, and they were people were hiding in a cave, and they had these shoes that were made of wooden soles that had the leather nailed into the wood and were studded with the nails to keep the shoes strong. And when they were in the cave, they suddenly heard sounds coming from outside the cave, and they thought that the enemies were coming against them, and there was a mass panic, and a crowd crushed to escape, and they killed one another with these nails in their sandals. And on account of the fact that this occurrence took place on the Shabbat, the decree was that a person should not wear these on the Shabbat. So that is a decree in itself, but now we come to continuing in Mishnah Bet, the second Mishnah, V'lo biyochid bisman she'ein baragloi makor. Person should not go out with a single sandal at a time when he does not have some wound on his foot, some reason for not wearing a sandal on both feet. There are two reasons given for this decree about not going out with one shoe, if it should occur to you. One, unless there was a reason that everyone could see, one of the reasons for the decree is that if people saw a person going out with only one shoe, they might think he was hiding the other shoe under his arm, under his garment, and they might think he was violating the Shabbat by carrying on the Shabbat. Another explanation of this decree is that people might laugh at the person for going around with only one shoe, and they would, if he gets embarrassed, he might take off that that single shoe and carry it on the Shabbat. But tefillin, the person should not go out with the tefillin on the Shabbat. These are the phylacteries of the male Israelite, which we do not don on the Shabbat. It is considered that the mitzvah of tefillin does not apply on the Shabbat. There are differences of opinion on that. There is a view cited in the Talmud that the tefillin may be worn on the Shabbat, but the adopted custom and halacha is that we do not and may not wear the tefillin on the Shabbat, not even on the inside, and certainly not on the outside. It is an affront to the Shabbat for a male to wear his tefillin on the Shabbat, because the Shabbat is a sign, just as the tefillin is a sign of our association and closeness to God. And if the person does not consider the testimony of the Shabbat to be sufficient and thinks he needs the tefillin also, that is an affront to the Shabbat. So we do not wear the tefillin on the Shabbat. And even according to the view that it would be permitted to wear them on Shabbat, they are not to be worn outside the private domain, even according to that view. The reason being that in those times, if people needed to attend to their bodily needs, they would go to some place outside the residential area, to a field or the like, and that would where they would relieve themselves. And it's not permitted to wear the tefillin while relieving oneself. That's an affront to the tefillin. And the fear is that if the person were permitted on the Shabbat to go out with the tefillin, they might come to need to attend their bodily needs and would take off the tefillin and then come to carry them in the public domain. So even for that reason, one may not go out with the tefillin on the Shabbat. V'lo b'komio bisman she'eno min ha'mumche, nor with an amulet or a talisman or the like at a time when it is not from an expert. The kameh was considered to be a form of spiritual healing, you could call it, in ancient times, where some letters and names and signs would be written on a parchment enclosed in a leather pouch, which would be worn around the person's neck for healing purposes. So the kameh needs, in order to be worn outside, if it's worn outside by, for example, a sick person who is seeking healing through the kameh itself has to be from a tried and tested writer of amulets. It cannot just be something that somebody has put together by themselves. It has to be tried and tested. According to the discussion in the Talmud, the amulet would have had to been written by somebody who had healed 3 people through his amulets. And now we come to aspects of military wear that are also forbidden on the Shabbat. V'lo b'shirion, the person may not go out with the shirion. This is an ancient form of armor, like a male chain coat or vest. V'lo b'kasto, not with a helmet. V'lo b'magofayim, nor with greaves. All of these kinds of ancient military wear, the cast or the helmet, the shirion, the chainmail or net mail breast protection, and the greaves, these are actually a form of clothing. They are military clothing for time of war, and as such they are not intrinsically forbidden on the Shabbat. They are certainly not forbidden if a person is having to is having to fight a war. In the case of fighting a war, not only these articles of military dress, but also actual arms are permitted. But when the person is not actually engaged in active combat, then not only may the weapons not be carried, as we shall learn in the coming Mishnahs, but also these kinds of armor should not be worn out, taken outside from one domain to the other on the Shabbat. So with that, my dear friends, we conclude our Kollel studies for today, and with the help of God, we will be back in just half an hour from now for the weekly Shavua Tov discussion on the subject of what is Simcha and how can we attain it. So for now, Shalom from Yerushalayim.
Side